And our panelists here, what we did with this panelist is our theme is community connections. And we're discussing current efforts in public and private sectors to support and develop multilingual proficiency. And so what we've tried to do with this panel is present sort of a chronological timeline of where we can intervene as a community to develop multilingual proficiencies. And so you can read their bios in the handout in your folder, but I'll start with Kim Golis-Robello, correct? She's from PACT, and she's going to talk about some of the activities and programs that they have for families and preschool age. So we're going to start young with her. Next, down the line, chronologically, we'll go to Jill Canfield. Jill over here is with the Maryknoll School, and they have a Chinese language immersion program, which we'll learn about, which was really interesting. We heard about immersion programs from our keynote speaker this morning. So we are moving up into the grades from kindergarten. Next, let's turn our attention to Hiromi Peterson sensei. She is with Punahou School, teaching Japanese language there for 30 years. So we have some primary K through 12 experience on immersion in Japanese language teaching. Then let's look to Chris Ferry over just down the street with MidPAC, and he'll tell us about his work over at MidPAC and their ELL program over there. And Justin, well, Kendi you heard from. Justin is with the adult literacy program at Hawaiʻi Literacy, so we'll hear a lot about how we're going to reach to our adult population developing their English proficiency. And then, of course, you heard from Kendi. And so everyone has a lay. Good. Okay, well, there's just one thing that I wanted to amplify that I heard this morning from Richard Brecht that I really liked. And so when I look at this panel, it made me think of it. The last slide he had up there was a quote from Julius Caesar, Shakespeare play. And I was like, oh, that's great. And I went to grab my phone to take a picture of it, and then it went off. I was like, oh, missed my chance. But I had a chance to talk to him downstairs over the lunch, and I was like, what was that quote, and what was that about? Can you paraphrase it for me? And he said it's from the Shakespearean play, Julius Caesar, and it was about the rising tide. And when all these boats are lifted in the rising tide, you kind of have to see what's happening around you and seize the opportunity, because you don't know when the tide is going to be high like that again. So this is an opportunity to make things happen in this area. And then I'm looking at this panel, and when I thought about that, and I was like, that works in Hawaii. That's a lot like surfing, right? you see the wave coming, the swell's coming. They're like, oh, this is our chance. We better take it. We got to paddle and take it. And then I'm looking at this panel. I was like, oh, there's 6 people here. That's like a canoe. And if anyone's paddled before, you know that you move the fastest, you move the best when you're working together and you got your timing right. And, traditionally we have 6-man canoes here in Hawaii. So we have a canoe before you who's going to talk about the efforts that they're making in their respective seats into developing multilingual proficiency. And so with that, I would like to turn the mic over to Kim, and then we'll work our way through that. And maybe leave a little room for questions after each talk and direct it to that individual. Okay, we'll go with Kim.
How does this work? Sorry.
Should be on.
You're not in. Okay, aloha. Hi, aloha. My name is, again, Kim Golis-Robello. I'm with Parents and Children Together, Family and Economic Development Center. Just a brief about Parents and Children Together. It's a family service agency that's statewide. We have 16 programs on all the major islands, and we serve from birth to ages. So we do have as 0 to, however, yes. Anyway, our service, sorry guys, I'm so nervous right now. So the services we address are early childhood education, our interventions, as well as community building. And I am from our community building program, the Family and Economic Development Center. So we are a one-stop shop for our families. We're in the heart of KPT, right in the middle at a resource center, and we see about 200-something families a month coming through our doors. So we offer not only our emergency food shelter, emergency food, pantry, clothing, information and referrals, but we also provide immigration services to our families. So we help with acculturation, taking care of, helping them with their I-94s or documents necessary to remain here in Hawaii, as well as providing them with some parenting classes or interpretive services. So we work primarily with our COFA migrants, residents of Kuhia Park Terrace, as well as our neighboring communities. We have 6 bilingual staff, all native speakers from different islands. So we have staff from the Marshall Islands, Chuuk, Palau, Samoa, and if we are unable to provide an interpreter for our families, we also help with finding someone through our agency. So our agency really, it's really large. We have more than 300 employees. And when they do orientation, we ask them, do you speak another language? Would you be able to provide an internal interpreter as an internal interpreter? And oftentimes they will provide it. So we do have people who are native Chinese as well as Korean speaking staff. One of our things that we pride ourselves on is trying to find employees that can connect well with our community. For example, our early Head Start program, which provides preschool and care to our kids. They find they hire staff that speaks the children's home language. So this way they'll help with supporting the child not only at home, as well as providing them with the English acquisition portion. So they maintain their culture, learning the language at home and keeping that up, as well as being able to understand English and be able to be prepared to go to school when they start kindergarten. Okay. One of the things that we do offer as well is our Sundays Project. Our Sundays Project is a culture-driven program that began in 2008. And it's really it focuses on learning opportunities to reduce the rate of school absenteeism. So a lot of our COFA families that come in, their culture is so different that they don't understand the need to come to school every single day. So with our Sundays, the rates of absenteeism was unbelievable. And so we really needed to find a way to help connect with those families so they can see their child be successful in school. So that's where we started our Sundays Project. So we partner with the Hawaii Department of Education to provide schools that had this Sundays Project, and it doesn't happen on Sundays during the week. It just started, it started at a church on a Sunday, and they just adopted the name. So we meet once a week for 15 weeks, typically 2.5 hours long. And so it's a real big commitment from the families. So we average about 15 graduates every semester. And what they do is the classes are held in both in English, Chuukese, and Marshallese. It covers 8 main topics, from how to read a report card to why you have to set up routines so that the kids go to sleep at a certain time. Understanding that it is the law that you go to school, which oftentimes they don't understand that. So we not only pull the resources from our staff, but we also will bring people in. So we work with Medical Legal Partnership, and they'll come and do a class, a session on maintaining your documents, how do we keep that together, as well as we partner up with our shucks. So we also partner up with our nurses that come in. I'm sorry, your friend's name is Eileen Barranco, public health nursing. So we partner up with public health nursing as well. They come in and do a class for our families. But it's just really trying to help them assimilate or acculturate to our culture as well. But also keeping their own. And it's called a positive deviance model, so it's really, the question is put to to the parents, and they come up with solutions and with some guidance from our staff, so that not only do they come up with their own problem solve on their own, but also build in a support system within the group. So oftentimes the families start connecting with each other, and they support each other and how they, with the help raising their child. Another thing that we do, sorry, had to write things down. We also provide our Economic Development Center, and that we provide employment services. So again, we work with families from the children to adults. We provide employment services for our clients who are getting back to work or just new to Hawaii. And often we notice that a lot of our COFA families have a hard time adjusting to our Hawaii. So they are, their expectations are very different from the work expectations here in Hawaii. So oftentimes they would end their employment abruptly, or they really, can't find a happy medium with their job. So we often we provide an acculturation program that's geared towards our COFA families. So basic acculturation things are, that we talk about is our interpersonal skills, understanding the state laws, health-related services, parental responsibilities, as well as home management. So in addition, sorry, I gotta hurry up. In addition to that, we help with our job readiness skills. So it's kind of what Kendi just talked about earlier, is how do we get them ready for employment and keep their jobs, and not just something that is, it's also to help with career readiness as well. So we'll help them get a job, then we can also assist them to go back to school. Then they can get a more living wage rather than what we currently have right now. Because studies have shown a family needs to, for a four-person family, $32 an hour to live here in Hawaii. And so oftentimes our families are working 2 or 3 jobs just to try and make ends meet. So we really want to help them get a job, go to school, and then find something that pays a little bit better. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. Excuse me. Any questions? Yeah, that was a lot, yeah. Like all blast. Okay, well, if you do have any questions, we do have our brochures that came out. I think the big points are, if you have a family member or someone, your client, that needs assistance, you can come to the family center. So we help with everything from getting ready for school, being successful in school, parenting classes, as well as getting employed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kim. One thing that you said that reminded me of something that Dr. Breck said this morning. He was talking about when you're learning another language, you have 2 different languages, you're developing this proficiency, then you're developing the plasticity in your brain, and you switch from suppressing or inhibiting information so you can focus in another language, and then you can turn that off and then go to this language, and that sort of thing, he said, really helps with problem solving and and developing creative solutions to things. So I think that's a really good thing that the PACT is doing to address young children. So yeah. So I guess then we'll just move down the age to kindergarten, and we'll hear from Jill and Maryknoll's immersion program in Chinese.
Thank you for having me today. I just want to start by saying that, we just started our 4th week of our new Chinese immersion program, so maybe it's a little early for me to do a presentation, but I just wanted to say that I thought I can at least share kind of why we're doing it, how we got to where we are, and what we're doing, or our model. But before I do any of that, I just want to say that we were able to start this program because of the vision and leadership of people, the leadership at our school, but also people in the community that have been so supportive in wanting to kind of have this happen. I know that we've had Hawaiian immersion for years, and they've also been a great resource for us, but just want to say that it's not something that we're doing alone, and we wouldn't have been able to get even this far without the support and consultation of many people that are maybe in this room or maybe downstairs, especially the Confucius Institute, the Center for Chinese Studies, the flagship program here at UH. There's some people on the mainland, as well as so many immersion educators both here and on the mainland that have been really generous and supportive. So I just wanted to just say that. You know, Maryknoll, if you're not familiar, we're the largest co-ed Catholic school here in Hawaii, and our mission is to develop learners, leaders, and global citizens of character. So we really view language as a way to do that. And you know, Dr. Brecht really talked a lot about some of the things I wanted to mention in a much more eloquent manner, but you know, the things that he talked about global competence, as well as just all the benefits of developing students with not just global competency, but language ability and the cognitive benefits of a bilingual brain. So that's all the things that we want to see. We want our students to be bridge builders, peacemakers. We want them to have the language ability so that, as Becky just mentioned, you know, they're creative, they're able to think outside the box, you know, language. And having a bilingual brain enhances your ability for divergent thinking. So there's so many reasons to do it and so many ways that it can be beneficial for our students, in addition to the language. You know, and when you think about everything that's happening in the world, I feel like it is more important than ever that we do things like this and whatever we can to try to equip our students to for the future, because we don't know what the future will hold. So that being said, just want to talk a little bit about the model that we're doing. So we at Maryknoll, we are starting with our kindergarten class. We were hoping for 30 to 40 students, and we started the program with 33 students, and as of the week 4, we still have 33 students in the program. We have 2 classes. So one group sees the Chinese teacher in the morning, and then they go and work with her English partner teacher, and then they flip-flop. So in addition to flipping the students, so we have the panda bears that start with the Chinese teacher in the morning, and they see the English teacher in the afternoon, and the brown bears start with the English teacher in the morning, and then they see the Chinese teacher in the afternoon. And we also have a 6-day cycle. So, let me go back. So first, our motto is the 50-50. So they spend half of the time, right now half of the day in Chinese and half of the day in English. And they are you know, subject area instructions occurring in Chinese and English. So the students are taking math, science, art in Chinese, Mandarin, and they take English, religion, and social studies and PE in English. So we have a 6-day cycle at Maryknoll. So every 6 days, the students flip. So the panda bears that started Chinese in the morning, when the next cycle starts, they have English in the morning. And then the brown bears have Chinese in the afternoon, just to help the students adjust. And, you know, if you're familiar with kindergarten, you know, a lot of it is just the basics of classroom management and helping them understand, you know, how to be in school, you know, and just getting used to even just sitting there and learning how to use a pencil. And I mean, there's so much that's happening that's, you know, maybe quite basic that you don't, if you haven't been a kindergarten teacher, you don't, you know, maybe you can't remember that far back, but all the things that you have to learn in kindergarten, but even though it might be very basic, they're terrific opportunities to learn language. I mean, as you're, you know, in the previous, so Maryknoll used to have, and still does, a kindergarten to 8th grade Chinese program that everybody takes. And then at the high school, you can choose Chinese, Japanese, Hawaiian, and Spanish. So in the previous program, it was maybe in 4th grade where you really focused on learning about the body and different body parts. But you know, with the Chinese immersion program, from day 1, you're talking about, come in, please sit down, you know, and you're starting to introduce them to your eyes and look at me as the teacher, you know. So there's a lot of charades that happen. But you know, the students are getting it. I'm amazed, even in week 4, even before, students are even producing very simple sentences and responses. And I just wanted to invite any of you to come and visit us. I think I got a little bit excited and lost track of my notes, so I just want to, I think I've covered all of what I planned to say, but just want to say that we view what we're doing as part of a pipeline to develop language proficiency here in our community. And you know, we want to do whatever we can. We're trying to connect everything we do through the immersion program to what's happening at the high school. We have a MX Scholars program where students can explore their passions, whether it's STEM or medical innovation or arts. And so even in those programs, we're trying to integrate language. And at the high school, we're offering dual credit programs where they can not only earn high school credit, but universities. We're working with the schools here in our community. So we really want to be part of the pipeline and be part of the solution. Thank you.
Any questions for Jill? Okay, good, because I have a question. As a parent, I was curious, the parents of your students, your immersion students, are they Chinese speakers seeking to maintain some of the language that they're learning at home, or are they, you know, exclusively English speakers that want to develop the proficiency of their kids? And
that's a great question. We have, of the 33 students, 7 are students where they have one or more parent that speaks Chinese in the home. And for some of the parents, they said that it was a way, they had noticed with their older children that they stopped speaking their home language publicly after a certain age, and so they were hoping that this, being a kind of in a social environment where they're having all these more friends that speak Chinese, that would encourage them to maintain their heritage language. But yeah, the overwhelming majority are from homes where there's no Chinese. They, you know, Maryknoll's always had a high percentage of students that have Chinese background, but yeah, no, very, very small percentage.
It just reminded me of a funny story that my daughter told me, because my daughter's speaking, growing up bilingual, and you know, she knows some Japanese, but she's Hapa, but she heard the boys on the other side of the classroom speaking in Japanese to each other, but they didn't realize that she spoke just Japanese, so she like felt like she had a secret. She knew what they were talking about. So I think this is a worthwhile effort, you know, for spy makers or whatever. I don't know, especially in Chinese. That'll be, you know, probably helpful in the future.
Can I share one quick story?
Yeah.
Just because you mentioned Japanese, so one of my favorite things that happened during the end of the second week, where we put the kindergartners into the parents come and pick them up at driveway, and we put them in their cars, and one of the students said, "Mom, Japanese is so fun." And his mom and I just had a good laugh, because we're like, okay, he doesn't know that he's speaking Chinese, and we didn't really reiterate that you're in Chinese immersion. But I mean, he's having a great time, and he's one of the students that just started producing things and saying things. So
that's good. If we can infuse joy in it, then yeah, great. Thank you, Jill. Question? Yeah. Yes, Tarina.
Yes. Yes. So for the parent, and just to be clear, parents can select immersion, or they can select to be in the English strand courses that we've always had. So yeah, every year we will add. So next year we'll have kindergarten and first grade. So speaking of workforce, we will need bilingual teachers, early ed, or at least elementary ed certified, more and more as the program grows.
Do you see other languages getting developed at Maryknoll or elsewhere?
I've heard that there's other schools that are considering it. We are starting to talk about what could be the next language that we do in immersion, but we're just trying to make it through this year first. But yeah, we've talked about that.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Jill. Okay. So next we are going to move to Hiromi Peterson, and she's been teaching Japanese language at Punahou for over 30 years. And I studied very, very, very little Japanese, but I've heard of her book Dekeru. So some of our staff has as well. So it's kind of celebrity status with the work that you've done. But we have a PowerPoint from Peterson Sensei. Thanks.
I retired from Punahou School Oh, can you hear me? Okay. I retired from Punahou 3 years ago, but I kept working on the textbook after that, and I finally finished at the AP level textbook, Dekiru, and this 30 years was full of adventures for me. But now I think it's worth it because I see so many former students now using Japanese language for their work. This is a Japanese curriculum at the Punahou School. And at the Punahou School, when the students continue to the Japanese 5, usually gets 4 or 5 on the AP Japanese exam, and are placed in the advanced level course at the university. For instance, if they pass that advanced class with a C at the UH, they can get that back credit for free. So it's so easy to minor Japanese language in that way. So there are more and more students are minoring, majoring, and double majoring in Japanese. And now I can see that all these students are going to that, study abroad in Japan and also teach Japanese at the school in Japan as through the JET program. And I see so many students in the Japanese field right now. And maybe I can just share, wait a minute, just a moment. Yeah. And is this the right one? Okay, I'm sorry, this is not my computer. Why did I start writing a Japanese textbook? We were using a college, UH textbook 30 years ago. And the topics was not interesting at all for students. What high school students interested in that conversation between the president and the wife? Then even good students couldn't carry on the simple conversation. So I asked my daughter, who's at my student age, what kind of topics you're talking about? And I thought if I change those conversations into Japanese, they should be able to, talk. And it really worked out as I expected. And this is a level 1 Japanese in daily life is the theme. And topics are very, easy. And after this level, students should be able to talk in Japanese in a daily life. And it really working well. And the most important thing is that the communication skill, it's so important. If teachers don't evaluate the students' communication skill, students never talk. Yes. So this is that one important thing. And this is a level 2. The theme is Japanese in community. And we picked the topics like ordering food at a Japanese restaurant and working at a t-shirt store and also giving directions to the tourists. It's so important to get family and the community involved in classes. Because when the students write that New Year's card and send to the grandparents are so happy. And on the Mother's Day, students write thank you letter and make mothers happy. And even the Japanese folk tale, when the students act in front of that elementary kids will be happy. So that's very important things, I think. This is level 3. The theme is study abroad in Japan. And students learn the language and the culture to survive a host family life. And also that Japanese school. And the students really enjoy making like a Japanese bento, not a local one, with mother's help. And also that students learn how to catch the train in Tokyo. And some goes to karaoke. So after this level, students really plan their own trip, if they have money. And this is level 4. The theme is Japanese souls. 4 honors is a seeker, spiritual, ethical, community responsibility credit. And as a project, the students interview the Japanese immigrant in honorific language. Then they present the immigrants' problems in Japanese in class. And for other projects, students ask that their grandparent about their war story, family war story, war story. Then they present that in Japanese in class. And this will become the treasure for the family members. Quite often those grandparents pass away after this interview also. And students really enjoy the authentic Japanese culture, such as tea ceremony, calligraphy, flower arrangement, martial art, etc. And they also do that community service like Okinawan Festival, Sadako Project at Pearl Harbor, Honolulu Marathon, JCCH New Year's Festival, Honolulu Festival, and teaching second grade students. In this level, the topic stays in the student's mind, and we hope that influence how they live the rest of their life. That language, when the students learn, they remember that time, but if they don't use, they lose it. But the culture stays in their mind. And this is level 5. The theme goes back to that daily life because the AP Japanese exam. It's so difficult because everything is by computer. And time is so limited. You really have to train yourself how to answer the questions. So students really need that practice in the AP format. That's why we decided to make this textbook. Then the students' weakness is that listening. Even for the conversation, they have to understand the question first. So we started to invite the senior citizens from Japan who's living in Hawaii to the classroom, and they have a natural conversation practicing, and everybody seems to be enjoying. And we started to have 2 Japanese or cultural events before the students graduate from the Punahou Japanese program. One is the kimono party. All seniors in the upper levels have a chance to wear the authentic Japanese kimono and take photos with classmates, and parents, and grandparents. And another one is that the Japanese graduation ceremony. We made a chance to recognize seniors who continued up to the highest level in front of their family members. So they are so proud, you know. And we also invite all the students who are in a lower level. So that becomes their motivations to continue until the highest level. And we started the Hiroshima Peace Scholarship with the royalties from the textbook when we realized that the students really don't know what happened under the mushroom cloud. And the scholarship sent 2 to 3 rising seniors and 1 teacher to Hiroshima every summer. And when they come back to school, they present at the chapel. So I think more people at the Punahou school know about the Hiroshima. And also that as a community service, we volunteer teacher and the student go to Pearl Harbor and teach Sadako's story and her peace message and teach how to fold the paper crane. So I think now that learning the language is not only to create more jobs, but also we are planting a seed of peace in each kid, to make a peaceful world. ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Peterson Sensei. I enjoyed watching your slides and to see how much the experience and culture was integrated into the curriculum and how it's almost inextricable. I have the same question for you as I did for Jill. The parents of your students, do you find that they're Japanese nationals seeking to retain that language ability in their children, or are they parents who want to improve the language abilities of their kids of another culture, or a mix?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't make. I didn't mention about now we have a new course, heritage. Japanese course 1 and 2. So we have more and more students who are bilingual already, and they are the one who's going to make a real bridge between the two countries. So we decided to start, educating those appropriate. Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting topic. Maybe at the end of the panel, hopefully we can discuss that a bit more, the heritage speakers and how much opportunity we have here in Hawaii to really celebrate the gifts that they can offer. Okay, well, thank you, Peterson Sensei. And then we will kind of flip it a little bit. Rather than focusing on teaching Japanese, teaching English to high school students, and we'll turn it over to Chris, and we'll hear about what's going on at Mid-PAC. Chris Ferry, yeah.
Do you have the extra copies? I just want to pass it out up here as well. Does everybody have one of these? I will talk about this in a minute. So, as she said, my name is Chris Ferry. I'm the ELD department chair in the high school at Mid-Pacific. I'm guessing most of you know, but if you don't, there's a large 1,600 student K-12 school directly behind UH. We're circled by trees and fences, so I've met people that have been here their whole lives, either in Manoa or at UH, that didn't know anything about the school, but we're right there. Mile Way has a gate. So we've been around since 1830, roughly. 1908 was the beginning of the name Mid-Pacific Institute, but prior to that, there was a missionary school for boys and for girls, and the international exchanges had started as early as the 1800s. So the international program at our school has been around for a very long time, and it's been a big part of what we do. So I'm in the high school, and in the high school we have about 850 students, and currently we have roughly 33 ELD students. We call it the ELD department now. We switched from ESL. If you want to know why, ask me later, but it's not that interesting. So we have about 33 students. We probably have, on average, 7% of our school is international, but a lot of those kids are fluent in English or fluent enough that they're not in our ELD program. And before when I was asked about joining this, I said, well, I don't know, all of our kids, we're preparing them for college. We're really not thinking about workforce skills in English. But then, I talked to principals, and then, of course we're preparing our students for the workforce, but directly I'm preparing them for TOEFL because that's their biggest hurdle, preparing them for the SAT, preparing them for their mainstream classes. Our students come in anywhere from 7th to 10th grade, ELD students, 7th to 10th grade. They have to be mainstreamed by junior year, so they have a mix of ELD classes and regular classes when they first come. And then, just hold this thing instead of bending over. Then as their language improves, as their English proficiency improves, they slowly take more mainstream classes. And the program, when I first started 5 years ago, I would say it was fairly traditional, typical language acquisition program. We had textbooks, we had regular tests, but the school itself has made a big movement towards project-based education, towards skills-based education, as many schools are. But as part of this, we set out to make a new learner profile so that we weren't just thinking in terms of, he's a good student, he's got high test scores, he did well on his SAT, he's taking all IB classes and AP classes. We wanted to get out of the mindset of just the academic path. And so the learner profile that the school created is what I passed out. And this is reflective of the work done by a few people looking, some people who actually traveled to California, talk with people at Google, talk with different large companies trying to research what 21st century workers need. And as we know, just needing a lot of information is slowly becoming fairly useless because any of us can pull Google out of our pocket, find information. We don't need somebody in that company boardroom that can recite a bunch of facts if we're trying to make a decision. We need somebody who can research, find that information, maybe share it amongst a group of people, collaborate, discuss, do a lot of different things that weren't something we thought about when I graduated from high school 20-something years ago. We were just thinking about knowing, mostly knowing information. So we have this learner profile, and as a language educator, at first, well, as a busy teacher too, I'm like, oh, is this more stuff I gotta think about, or more stuff I have to justify in my assessment? And as a teacher, when you're busy, you get a little frustrated. But as I started to trust that my administration was telling me, you can sacrifice some of your language content. You don't have to cover 100 vocabulary this quarter. Maybe cover 30 vocabulary and see what happens if instead I focus on students learning to self-assess and monitor their own progress. So little by little, we've worked in these kind of descriptors into our assessments. Now most of my assessments are done through rubrics, a lot less multiple choice, a lot less discrete test items, although I still do them because TOEFL and SAT certainly test that kind of logic. But I want to just give a couple examples, and I really wanted to show some pictures, but I didn't prepare well enough. Because we do have a lot of pictures on if you type in Mid-Pacific International blog, we have a blog of some of the projects that we're working on. But one example I wanted to mention is every semester I take the ELD kids with another teacher to our elementary school, and we do a project with the elementary school students. There's no ELD students in the elementary school, they're all proficient enough in the elementary school, so they're basically all native speakers. And this semester, for example, our project is going to be we have mostly Japanese, Chinese, and Korean ELD students. We do have occasional Russian students, occasional European students or South American, but it's 98% is Korean, Japanese, or Chinese. And they're going to bring a story from their home culture and tell it to the American students in their native language. So they'll read a story in Chinese, like maybe a second grade picture book, the kind of things that second graders would read. And then after that, they're going to tell them the same story in English. And then the local student is going to tell them a story in English that they enjoy, whether it's I don't know what kids like, Power Rangers, that's probably 30 years ago, but they're going to tell them something they enjoy. And so this kind of project, of course it's interesting. It's great to see high school kids working with young kids. It's great to see young kids, because they're so inquisitive, it's a great chance for language practice. We can all see the benefits of that, but I struggled with, well, I'm going to spend 5 classes maybe preparing them for this. What about all these vocabulary I got to get that they need to learn for their TOEFL exam, which we do every spring at our school. And so it's taken some trust, I guess, that this is a better way of learning because of, my principal just keeps reminding me, this is what we're teaching them. This learner profile is what we're going for now. We're not going for the kid that can recite 50 states and capitals. That's not our goal anymore. So I've slowly been doing more projects trying to trust the system that I believe in, which is, it's nice that I have a system that I believe in, but so now instead of worrying about which language I'm not covering, I look at this and I think, well, how can I write up a project description and a rubric that reflects the skills we're trying to teach? So for the elementary school collaboration, for example, if you see on the right, it says build social emotional awareness and empathy. So I see that there's empathy built on our students' part when they have to think about how they're telling a story to a second grader. I see there's social and emotional awareness because the stories have meaning to them, but does it have meaning to a second grader? So they're trying to figure out how to communicate in a way that is meaningful. And there's also, if you look under there, nurture, sustain, steward the environment, and community. And I really see it powerful that we're trying to build a sense of community at the school, that a 10th grade Chinese student is there nurturing, a second grade student from Hawaii. So now I'm working on just rewriting course descriptions to try and reflect some of these things. Another project that we're doing that I was just working on this morning in class, we call it the Good Learner Project. Because most of our students come from East Asia, from traditional backgrounds, especially our Chinese students and Korean students are coming from very large classrooms, very traditional styles. So we've developed a project that spans a whole quarter and tries to get them to analyze how they used to study in their home school. And then it culminates with a project where they interview a subject area teacher, a science teacher, a history teacher, and they're going to be making a talk show style interview with that teacher. So we're going to be watching, I like Stephen Colbert, so we'll probably watch a little Stephen Colbert. But I think he's a funny interviewer, because especially as scientists on there, sometimes it's really interesting, even if you don't like his politics, but he really likes science, so he'll have these scientists on there, and somehow it's so much more fun than Tom Cruise or Madonna or these famous people, because he brings out this really interesting information. So we're going to be looking at some comedy and some ways of interviewing and communicating with people that brings out facts, science, or history, whatever, and also incorporates humor so people want to watch it. Because normally 16-year-olds are not that interested in these things because they're, hit over the head with it all day. So we're going to be working on, they're doing a keynote to introduce their home schools to the class. Right now, this morning, we're working on infographics that look at how students learn best. So looking at mindfulness, looking at exercise, diet, sleeping patterns, and technology use. Trying to explain some of the research behind how those things are affecting their learning. So they're making an infographic right now. And then later, they're going to come back to this talk show. They're going to go out and interview different teachers and try to, we've got pretty good technology at the school, so they can film it, record it, edit it, and then they'll be showing that to the class. And hopefully we'll have something on the website that shows a good result of that. But that project, it's a long project, but we're looking at the learner profile. We're trying to have students that can communicate using multiple mediums. So, our school is well known for art because we do have a strong art and theater program. So we get a lot of learners and families that believe strongly in, students that can produce a video, instead of a traditional academic learner. We have lots of those too, but giving those students a chance to shine through these kind of programs. And then also self-assessment and monitoring their own learning. This for me is probably my favorite one. So we do a lot of reflection when they do presentations, we record everything. They have to watch themselves on video a lot, and they have to do reflections. And often the reflections are graded equally with the actual presentation. So if they can show me that they're learning how to self-assess, and they're also using, that's where the language part comes in, they're using rich language to describe their own strong points and their own weak points, they can get an A, even though it's not a necessarily traditional assessment. And then also, there's a lot of collaboration and risk-taking through a lot of this, because they're often doing things publicly, whether it's in front of their classmates or with other teachers, or some products that are going to be, if you go to the website again, you'll see their pictures on the website, and the school's Instagram and Facebook is often flooded with students doing work, so they're kind of forced into risk-taking in some sense. So in that way, I would say that we're preparing students for the workforce. If these are truly skills that'll be needed in the future, I hope that we're developing these skills in the students. One challenge I thought was interesting, I come from a basically all-white town in rural Pennsylvania, and when I was young, there was we had 1 African-American student, 2 Hispanic students, and about 798 white kids. And there was a girl from Costa Rica who was an exchange student, and when she came, we were so excited. Yay, there's somebody from somewhere else, let's go talk to her. So we tried to become friends with her really quick. The one challenge that I imagine is common for a lot of Asian immigrants in Hawaii is most of the population's Asian, nobody stands out. So when our students come to the school, a lot of them their English needs a lot of work, but 70 to 80% of our students look like them, so no one knows they're international students. No one knows that they might be someone interesting to talk to, because we have of course, a lot of Japanese, Chinese, Korean heritage students that would probably enjoy talking to them. So it's one challenge we face, is that kids don't treat them any differently, which of course in one sense is great. But in another sense, there's a lot of kids that would love to get to know these kids and become better friends with them, because they want to practice their own Chinese, or just they want to talk to somebody different, just like I did when I was in high school. And the girl did go to the football game with us, I still remember that. So we were successful in befriending this girl, and she had a great year, I think, so that was a good experience. But we're trying to create that experience for our students where they feel a real part of the community and they're not feeling isolated as international students. So one thing we did, and Hiromi mentioned something similar, but we have a weekly language lab, we call it. It's probably a pretty boring title, but we have a couple local students who are interested in learning Chinese or Japanese or Korean, and they come in, and so they just have a language exchange. They'll spend part of the time speaking in English, part of the time speaking in their own language. And not that many students come regularly, but we do have 5 to 10 students that do come regularly, and some of them have formed really good friendships. Some of them we see hanging out outside of school. So that's been successful, even if it's a small sample. I've been really happy to see our newly arrived ELD students sometimes hanging out with local kids on the weekend, because that's what a lot of them want to do, but it's very hard to do. Because students, especially a lot of our kids, have been together since kindergarten. They know each other so well, the local students. So that's my quick talk there.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Well, I just wanted to comment. I liked what you were saying about how integrated it all is with soft skills, and it really seemed to harmonize with what Dr. Brecht was saying this morning about developing multilingualism and learning empathy and working, and at the high school level, it's all about being social and your friends and finding your first boyfriend or girlfriend and bringing them to the football games. So I like that it's all kind of coming together. It's not just the cerebral learning language and taking a test, but it's just more about being sort of a citizen of the world in a sense. And this is sort of a mini version of it in the high school setting. So I enjoyed hearing about that. Thank you. So I guess now we can sort of step outside the academic setting and take a look at some community programs available for adults, and we'll move it to Justin. We'll hear about the adult English learner program there, and if you have any thoughts to share about Hawaii Literacy's other programs in Multilingual, please feel free to share.
Sure.
Thanks, Justin.
Aloha. My name's Justin. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here and representing Hawaii Literacy. Before I talk about the two programs that I work with, I'll tell you a little bit about Hawaii Literacy's program. So we have family libraries at Kuhio Park Terrace and Mayorite Homes for kids to come and enjoy literacy-based activities after school. We also have PALS, which stands for Parents Achieving Literacy Workshops, which is to give parents that also live at those public housing sites activities to do in the home to help encourage practices in the home that increase literacy. We also have a bookmobile up in Waianae, which allows kids that maybe don't have access to books to come and have a good time on a really cool big bus that is like a mobile library. And so those are a few of our other programs. The two programs I manage are our adult literacy program and our English language learner program. Our English language learner program, also we have 3 classes, or 3 different programs, I guess. 2 of them are at the same public housing that I just mentioned, and those are for a lot of the parents that the kids come to our family libraries. A lot of their parents will come to our ELL classes there, but it's open to any resident that lives at Kuhio Park Terrace or Mayorite Homes. And in addition to that, we have a ELL program at Komokapili Church on King Street in Kalihi, and that's open to anyone. Most of the learners that come to that class we have primarily Chinese immigrants in that class. We also have representation from Japan and Korea, and then we'll have a few from other places, South America and things like that. Our English language learner program, we have some of the same struggles that other ESL programs have, and that is students with different levels of English in a big classroom setting. So addressing folks that have lower levels of English and higher levels of English is always a challenge. We do have access to multiple classrooms at Komokapili Church where, in theory, we break the class up into different levels, and we also offer one-on-one tutoring for folks that have specific needs. Unfortunately, last year during one of the tropical depressions or storms that came through, our classrooms got flooded, so we've been out of a classroom for almost a year, a little over a year actually. So we've had to have a big classroom setting, which has been challenging. In addition to the English language learner program, our adult literacy program is designed to assist adult learners with whatever goals they may have. In a lot of ways, our program is a bridge to some of the other programs you've heard about today, whether it be the community schools or Oahu Work Links or whatever it is that adult learners are trying to do. We have a lot of learners that come to our program wanting to get their GED, wanting to enter the workforce. Our adult literacy program is dependent on volunteer tutors. So we offer a 12-hour training for volunteers who want to become tutors, and they then go on to tutor the learners that we serve. A lot of our volunteers have teaching experience, maybe are retired teachers, but not all of them. So what we say right away when we start our training is that the most important quality or thing that you bring is that you want to help people and that you genuinely care. And if you do that and have the ability to read and write, then you can become a tutor for our program. And we try to make our program, we don't try, we do, we make our program learner-centered. And what that means to us is that we let the learner dictate and drive the direction of their education with us. And we train our tutors to be flexible. And what that means a lot of times is if we have a curriculum that we use and we have materials that we use, and our tutors do a really good job of trying to advance our learners with their literacy skills. But a lot of times our learners will come to a session and maybe they need a medical bill read, or they need to have a lease read, or they need to do something for work. And so our tutors are trained to basically drop everything and just attend to whatever need a learner has on that given day. And I think that's something that people who receive services from our program really appreciate. In addition to that, we're in the process of forming a adult learner council, which will further empower our adult learners to help inform us how we can make our programs better for their needs. And while I'm here, if you're interested or know someone that may be interested in volunteering, we do have tutor trainings quite frequently. So you can always look us up on our website, which is just hawaiiliteracy.org, or if you want to talk to me afterwards, I'd be happy to answer any questions and try to recruit you. Mahalo.
Thank you, Justin. I enjoyed hearing about the role that the community can play. We had been focused on the folks whose job it is to educate the teachers, but here is a program where people with an interest or with the skills, with perhaps a family history, and they want to build on this. There's opportunities here in Hawaii to do so through your program. So thank you. I hope some people are inspired to tutor. So, okay, so Kendi, you will be in a fortuitous position to wrap it up and, pull together any common themes that you've been able to ascertain over the course of the day. But yeah, so we'll hear more about McKinley and adult programming and any other thoughts you may have.
Yeah, this is okay. So I just wanted to comment on what Kim had said earlier about her population, which seems similar to mine, but mine are more on the adult side, that sometimes it's hard to go to work every day, and when I talk to employers, that's a problem. And actually, education is a bridge to employment because it teaches people to come regularly, on time, to dress appropriately, to talk appropriately, to not look at their cell phone. So even if you think you're not teaching people directly to go to the workforce, you are. I talked with a vocational rehab counselor, and she was sad that our ICANN program was closing because she referred a lot of her clients to us because it gave them something regular to go to and something regular to do so that it could get them ready to go back to work after their injury. That kind of social emotional piece that you're working on at MidPAC is really important for people to self-regulate, to continue to persist in their goals, whether it's in academic place or if it's for work. I wanted to comment on these posters here that you see for the Chinese and the Korean flagship, because these are students who are at the University of Hawaiʻi. They're at a high level of language. And a few months ago, I attended a session that Dina was hosting, and she brings in employers to the flagship. And they try to recruit students because of their language. So there was kind of a luxury retail employer who was looking for Korean bilinguals. And she was saying about how much money they could make because they're bilinguals. You never think about the career that you're going to have, I guess, when you're in undergraduate, but they were kind of saying these are kind of the opportunities that you have. And even in my department for second language studies, I have classmates who work for the government, who work for refugee services, where they use their language to help other people. So I guess to kind of close, to say, language is a resource that can be used for people to achieve their goals. I don't know what more to say, and that people really need time to develop their language. So, a lot of times my students talk about having broken English, broken language, but I always tell them, no, it's not broken, you're developing. And so it's looking at people who do have an accent or who are not, speaking proficiently. They're developing their language.
Okay, any questions for Kendi? Okay, well, I alluded to a question earlier today about heritage speakers and Hawaii's unique position here with the blend of different language groups. So I was wondering if any of you have any thoughts about what we can do specifically in Hawaii to develop their proficiencies and their capacities in the workforce. Should I call on someone like a teacher does? Kendi, you seem to have something on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, so at the university we do have a lot of heritage language learners, so they usually are more proficient in listening and speaking versus folks who come in and they don't know any of these, they're zero beginners. I mean, they're absolute beginners, so it is difficult to kind of accommodate the two kind of learners, but it's actually the heritage language learners that are the ones that are more motivated in the classroom to learn the language. And since we're at the university, we study that kind of stuff, so it's actually related to a strong motivator for heritage language learners is their grandparents. So actually what Sensei was talking about with talking with their grandparents, that's a big motivator for students in learning an additional language. I'm sorry, not tied it to workforce.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, they want to persist.
Yeah.
I'll speak real quick to my belief in the importance of labor unions. And before I was with Hawaiʻi Literacy, I worked for the Harriet program, which is United Here Local 5's training program. And they offer, and we offered when I was there, Japanese language programs, Korean language programs, Chinese language programs. We had an ESL program for most of the labor force for the union is Filipino immigrants, and so we had a lot of participation in that. And so you compare, we talk about folks having 2-3 jobs in Hawaii because that's what you have to survive a lot of times. You compare wages from non-labor, non-union labor workforce to having a union, and you automatically get an increase in pay and a standard of living. But in addition to that, a lot of unions have training programs for their members, and I know United Here Local 5 is one of them. And so if you're working for a hotel and you don't have that, then you probably aren't going to have an opportunity to take Japanese classes for free or Chinese classes. And of course, there's a economic incentive for them in a lot of the union contracts at the hotels. If you are able to proficiently speak Japanese or Korean, you can get a differential in your pay, so further incentive. But a lot of folks just genuinely wanted to interact with their clientele and be able to say, even if it's little things, the restaurant's over there, good morning, things like that. And so I'll plug union membership while I'm here.
Anybody else with thoughts on that? Well, Justin said something with the differentials that reminded me. There was a legislative proposal maybe 3 years ago. It didn't really get far, but at least, I think it got at least a hearing. I forget who introduced it, but it was the idea of giving a pay differential for those who demonstrated a certain amount of linguistic proficiency. I think it was like 10% or something like that. So that just has me thinking about, as a matter of policy, we're a government agency, and we were talking about WIOPA, is that right? WIOPA. I don't know where the P came from. But yeah, as policymakers, if you had their ear, what kinds of things would you like to see in place in terms of programming, fiscal support? What sort of things would you like to see? Maybe what would the time frame would be, 5-10 years down the road, so we can see a really robust multilingual workforce as developed through some of your programming. If anyone has thoughts, sorry to put you on the spot, but.
head. So I'm trying to focus. Can you say that again, Becky?
Okay, so let's just pretend that there are legislators in this audience, and they have access to our coffers, and they can make some decisions about what to do with the money, and they want to see multilingual proficiency thrive in Hawaii. What might they do to support that and some of the programming that you guys offer?
Well, one of the things we are really working on is developing. So we started this COFAR, Compact of Free Association, acculturation training, specifically because our families could not sustain or retain their positions, and because of and we know that our non-speaking families earn a lot less. There's a huge disparity in the wages that they earn. So we were working with our Office of Community Services that provide us funding specifically for these programs. So I believe that with, and I know I'm not sure if I'm getting into trouble, but you know, up here, I believe that if we put more funding into programs such as these, so that we can help our adults in developing their English proficiency. So although we are not as skilled, we're going to start working with Hawaiʻi Literacy really soon. But we do have our Rosetta Stone program that we use. And we do have some RA families that also provide some tutoring to our current clients who are not speaking English at all. So I think we need to do some work around English language learners, and also providing more opportunities and funding for these kind of programs, even for like programs such as the WIOA that we used to work with as well for our C-based clients. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's what we should do. But there has been significant cuts in that kind of funding. One of our program was one of the programs that got cut significantly. So that, yeah, sorry, kind of touch a nerve. So
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Kendi mentioned some serious funding cuts as well to the community schools, right?
Okay, well, since I have the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing with adult education is, we're at the bottom of the Department of Education. But if you think about making people more productive in society, then it's worth the investment. So we had students in the ICANN program who were maybe close to being homeless. And so you think about how much money does it take to get people off the streets, versus having them in this little program where they can build their skills and achieve the goals that they want to do. A career that they want to work in, or a class that they want to take so that they can work. But administrators don't think that way. They don't think about society as a whole. They only think about, this is my bottom line, and we can't sustain this program because my bottom line. So I think if I were talking to a policymaker who might, I don't know if they're hiding under the chair or something, I would have them think about Hawaii as a whole, and how education can be an intervention for some of the things that concern us today, and the costs, and think about balancing that cost with making people more productive.
Yeah, which is hard to measure. That might be the challenge, is that it's not as tangible. Lost opportunity is hard to measure. But I think Chris had something on the tip of his tongue. Did you? Seemed like there's something you want to say.
Well, I sarcastically would remind them that the world currency is pegged to the dollar, but it very well could be pegged to Chinese currency in the near future if we continue on the path we are with debt. So there's certainly incentives very, globally, economically, but I was just, had dinner with a friend. He's a geologist for the state. He's been a geologist for the state for 20 years. He does, if you want to build a new building, he goes and tests the soil to look at what chemicals are in the soil. He's been doing this for a long time. But I met him Saturday night, and Saturday during the day, he said he was with a group of software developers because the state has a program where different departments are proposing what kind of software or it was iPhone, iPad app they need for their to get their work done more efficiently. And so he was working with this people that were software designers, didn't know anything about soil testing. He was trying to tell them what he needs. And then several different private organizations they actually develop the app, and then they submit it to the state, and the state chooses one, and they get funding to create that app. So I just thought it was a really interesting idea, that trying to use software because there's so many developers now, and because a lot of public-private partnerships are, even like Beaky, there's a lot of technology and, built around into getting that implemented. So I just would like to see something accessible for families, on their smartphones, because even these days, a lot of the poorest families do have a smartphone in their house or, a cheap computer. So I think it'd be neat to see, some sort of partnership like that to develop something. And there are a lot of things out there for English language learners, but there's really nothing localized, that I've seen that's teaching the English you need to assist the customer in Waikiki, so that would be neat.
Yeah, and technology, it's easy to multiply in a cost-effective way rather than filling up classrooms.
Yeah, it's easy to convince people, I think, to do something like that because of how it's growing.
Yeah. Okay, any questions from our audience? Okay, all right, well, with that, thank you so much to this panel.